for you? Fabulous. So as you see, we will record, and we will, as we do with all of our workshops, when we do record, we will share the link to the recording with everybody who registered. Also there is a PowerPoint that they'll get to later, and we will share a copy of that too, either later this afternoon or tomorrow. But backing up a little bit, my name is Sharon Goodson, and I work for the Leech Tag Foundation and Impact Cubed. And it looks like we have many familiar faces here, so you probably know me and what we do. But this workshop is actually a workshop of San Diego Gives, which is a year-round nonprofit capacity building project that is being led this year by the wonderful Monica Martinez, who is there. You can see her Zoom box, and with the North County Philanthropy Council. So we so appreciate all of her wonderful work. And we are helping in our small way by doing the workshops, you know, the training component that comes along with this, because there's plenty of other things to do as well. So thanks to our good friend, AJ Steinberg, who we got to know really a few years ago, started coming to some of our fundraising Fridays, and just nothing was the same since. If anybody doesn't know AJ, she is all things fantastic. Well, she's a fantastic person, and she has her own consulting company that focuses on fundraising and creating events with tremendous impact. And I know that she's a friend to many of you as well, and she's helped so many of us just informally with advice and formally as well. And so this conversation came out of one that AJ and Monica had to make sure that, you know, we talk so much about auctions, and they're a big part of the fundraising that so many of our organizations do. And, you know, it needs a little bit of time, you know, to talk with the experts. So AJ has pulled together a fantastic panel for us today. So including AJ, who could do this whole thing also, you know, on her own. We have Lauren Batterby, who is the CEO of Life Event Staffing and specializes as well in auction staffing and fundraising for nonprofits and corporations. And we also have Anna Couvret, who many of you know as well, is a longtime auctioneer here in San Diego and works with Clint Bell, who many of us also know. So I am going to turn it over to AJ and her team here, and we will, there's always time for questions. I'm sure that they will get to those, but I'll be monitoring the chat too. So thank you, AJ. Go for it.
Thank you. All right, you guys, here we are. You get to see the back of the house. Can you all see this? Just say Y in the chat if you can see my screen, because everything else disappears. Yay. All right, you guys, perfect. It is so good to have you here. I'm really excited to be here with Anna and with Lauren, who you're going to get to know very well. I'm going to do a shout out to Monica. Yay, North County Philanthropy. It's amazing. And they have taken over San Diego Gives. And for those of you who have calendars out, I want you to mark the date for it. Monica, you can unmute. It's the Volunteer Appreciation Celebration. Is that November 1st?
Yes, November 1st.
All right, thank you. So amazing. I want everybody to come and participate, because we can't do it without our volunteers. But today, I have my friend Lauren and Anna, who are volunteering to give you tips and tricks for auction success. So for those of you who don't know Anna, she went to USC. She's kind of a local gal. She's not only an auctioneer, she's a comedian and she's an actor, which if you know anything about engaging an audience for an auction, you need to have somebody who has training in the theater and who knows how to hold the crowd and engage them and excite them. And Anna's got all of that. She's been working in San Diego, as Sharon just said. She's well known. She's worked for organizations like the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, the San Diego Food Bank, and Sharp. So we're going to hear from her, and she's going to talk about the live auction. aspect of auctions. We also have Lauren Batterby, who you will hear from her wonderful accent, is not from San Diego. She is from England. She has a bachelor's degree in event planning, so she knows all about events, but she has founded Life Event Staffing to provide technology staffing for your events. So that is something that I want to talk about in a little bit, because I have done this for well over 20 years, and I did it by myself without a professional on site to help me with the technology and the staffing portion of events. And the minute that I found Life Event Staffing, this is not a paid ad, this is truth, I now write into my contracts that I won't do an event, but they have to, unless they hire somebody who's a professional to oversee the technology. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But then me, if you don't know me, I'm AJ Steinberg. I am with Queen Bee Fundraising. I am a 20+ year event planning specialist for nonprofit events. I also specialize in sponsorships and do coaching for organizations to help them create engaging and profitable events. So that's who we are. And this is what we're going to cover today. First, I get to talk. You get to hear me for a few more minutes, and I'm going to tell you how to get ready for your auction. Then we're going to talk about working with your auctioneer to lead your live auction to success. Then we're going to talk about how to work on site the day of the event to make sure that things don't get screwed up with your live or your silent auction, how to efficiently run your event technology the day of your event for auction success. And then we have a real surprise guest who's popping up, who is a specialist in silent auctions and silent auction strategies. So we have a really great presentation for you today, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it. So just to start out, I'm going to preface this with saying there are lots of webinars that talk about silent auctions, right? There's a ton that talk about how to get auction items or do this. But auctions aren't just your silent auction. But, when people show up and they start bidding, whether it be on paper or mobile, that is the end game pretty much of your silent auction. Auctions for an event as a whole, and this includes virtual or a live gala or whatever you're doing, auctions encompass your silent auction, your live auction, and your paddle raise. Super important to have a holistic view of this, because quite honestly, while all of you ask more questions about silent auctions than anything else in the universe, the truth is silent auctions are nothing but a shopping spree for your guests. They do nothing to move your mission forward in the eyes of your guests. They take an incredible amount of resources for your organizations to pull together. So a 50 to 100 piece silent auction, that's like 100 hours of work for your volunteer teams and your staff, right? Am I right? So y'all are spending all that time on it, and basically you make some money. But it does nothing to turn guests into donors. And any live event is an opportunity to do more than raise money. We're trying to build affinity, build community among the guests who are participating. So silent auctions do nothing like that. However, when you have a live auction, that's real people talking to your guests. That's a real person, an auctioneer talking to your guests. A paddle raise is somebody giving its speech about your mission and bringing them in. So look at all three of those elements, the live auction, the silent auction, and the paddle raise, as your holistic auction that you're working towards. So let's talk about getting ready. You need to be organized for your auction before you even have your first committee meeting, if possible. And I'm going to, here, you can write this down. Somebody can type this into the chat. My email is AJ, it's me, at queenbeefundraising.com. If somebody will just type that in for me, since I can't type and talk at the same time. But what I'll do is I'll send you my silent auction templates. I'll send you a wish list and all of these things that I'm going to talk about. Thank you, Stephanie. She's so awesome. All right. You need to be organized at the very beginning if you want to succeed with the people who will be getting your items for you and working on your silent live auction. Being organized is important because it shows you're a leader. It gives the people on your team, meaning your committee and or staff, it gives them confidence that you have this well in hand and that you're going to lead them well. So being organized helps you down the line to let everybody know, hey, these are the steps we need to take to get these auction items. This is how we're going to follow up with the auction items. I call these things protocols. So at the beginning, the very first meeting you have with your team, with your committee, I want you to come up with a wish list. Do not just sit there and say, let's put together an auction. You know what has sold in past years and at other auctions. Put together a wish list, and I have a sample for you in my little silent auction folder that I can send to you. Give them a wish list of what you want them to solicit. Give them a solicitation letter right off the bat. Do not make them ask for it. You've probably had solicitation letters that say, dear blank, we're asking, our organization is having this gala. We're asking you to donate a dinner for two for blank. That solicitation letter exists. Update it, create it. Whoop, there you go. Sorry. Thanks, Lori. So wish list, solicitation letter, and that's really important because getting this to your people at the very beginning lets them say, hey, now is the time to go out and get auction items, not a month before the actual event. And a donor intake sheet. We really rely on paperwork to make sure that we are getting the item information correct, the donor information correct, the value correct, and how we're going to be either picking it up or creating a certificate for it. These three things are super important to have right at the beginning. You should have them printed and handed out to your team when you have your first committee meeting. Why print them out? It's because some people need to see it physically when they're sitting there at the meeting, and they will want to make copies of it to take with them. Some people are very physically visual, put the connection together. But you need to follow up by sending a PDF of all of these items so that they have it in their inbox on their computer or their phone, and they can have this at will to print out themselves or to forward to other people. So that's being organized. Once you have those documents, you are going to have to brainstorm with your team, and the team is your committee and or your staff and board members, because board members won't just organically show up with auction items. I don't know if you notice this about board members. They'll sit on their hands unless you really motivate them to move forward to help you with stuff. So it's up to you to be the cheerleader. So you're going to brainstorm. You're going to take that wish list and you're going to take it at a meeting and go over the items you want and ask people, hey, here it says tickets to the Padres game or sporting events. Any of you have season tickets? When you do that live with a person or via Zoom, if that's your only option, when people hear other people chime in and say, you know what, I belong to a golf course, I would love the golf club, I would love to donate a foursome of golf for this auction, that puts an idea in other people's head. And they say, well, you know what, I belong to a tennis club and I'd love to host a little tennis tournament. And somebody says, you know what, I have a tennis teacher. So what it does is it snowballs ideas and it gets people excited. It gets them to feel they have skin in the game. That's part of it, is really building a team. And we rely on teams when we're putting on these big events, is that we need to make everybody feel they're heard, they're important, and that we value their input. So this brainstorming is a great step for that. But here's the secret sauce to what makes them want to get items for you, is you need to let them know it's easy. They will not be chasing things down. You need to let them know that they should do the outreach and get the donation form to their contact. And then it's up to you to identify somebody, either a staff member, yourself, or a volunteer, who will do the follow-up. And that's super important. When people think that they can do one and done, meaning, hey, I'm eating here, I would love to have a gift certificate, here's a donation form, you can email it back to this email address. If they know it's that one and done, they will not balk at going out and soliciting items throughout their daily work days or their everyday life. So that is the secret that I use to make sure that my teams are helping us to get those auction items. Now, moving past just getting the items, because we are going to talk, we have that super secret great guest speaker who's coming at the end to talk about silent auctions. But I want to talk to you about why we have a professional auctioneer and a professional staffer, and me, professional event planner, on this webinar today is because you all are professionals in what you do. You do not have 20 years of event planning experience behind you, most likely. You probably have not gone and taken auctioneering courses and successfully done dozens of auctions and raised millions of dollars. And you've probably never staffed an event with professionals who know how to handle this. So I want to talk to you just quickly about this. So for me, I look at it, these are the different professionals that help with your events in general, which means your auctions. One of them, and this is out of the reach of most of you, I am not touting this as what you should do, but there are full service event planners. Those are me. I go in and for a very large fee, I will do all the management, production, oversee the event, be on site, staff it for you, everything. That is not doable for most organizations because of the cost. It's super expensive, which is why I do webinars, so you guys can do this without a professional. But there's also, just be aware, day of event planners. And I'm not talking about wedding planners. For those of you who have a friend who did wedding planning on the side 5 years ago, do not look at them as a professional day of nonprofit event planner. Weddings don't have auctions. They don't have funded needs. They don't have the kind of bells and whistles that a real life gala does. But you can hire day of event planners for your gala, which are very cost effective ways of ensuring that all those months, usually takes up to 9 months to plan a gala, all those months of planning, the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars you've invested in this event don't get wasted because everything went wrong the day of your event because people weren't professionals and didn't know how to do it. So you can hire a day of event planner. That's an option for you. There are also now, and this is where Lauren's going to come in. I didn't know about Lauren's company until a couple of years ago, and it was like the angels coming down singing to me, because there is one thing I can always rely on, and that is that there will be a problem with the technology. Right? Just put a Y or an N if you've ever had technology problems or issues with registration or cashiering at an event that you've been working on. Just put Y if you have. I just want to know. Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Why would we think that there's tech problems, right, you guys? All right. So here's the deal. When Lauren came along and I heard about her, I literally had that angel's moment because I am tired of working so hard on perfecting these events. I've worked 9 months and I get there and the Wi-Fi goes down, that the laptops aren't connected properly, the volunteers haven't been onboarded properly, that there are issues that do happen with people have weird credit card issues or questions about, I want to pay by check. And now the line is backed up through the ballroom because they can't check out because one glitch happens. I have actually once said the F word during checkout when the technology failed. Don't tell anybody, but I will never say the F word at an event again, because this is what happens is that now I require to have somebody who knows the platform, whether it be GiveSmart, Greater Giving, Octria, Auction Frog, whatever it is. I hire a tech person who is specialized in that to be on site, to set up the computers, to make sure that the registration, cashiering, all of the data for the guests is ready to go. And if anything happens while I am running and trying to get the stage program going, there's a professional there taking care of it. Doesn't that sound nice? I know, really. And it's not that expensive. And it's just amazing. All right, so we have that. And then, of course, I always say you need a professional auctioneer. Hands down, the best investment that you have, along with the platform manager and the day of event planner, because the guy who's really funny at your board meeting is not somebody who can get a crowd to raise their paddle at $10,000. That's what a professional auctioneer does. All right. So let's talk about this. Anna, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, I can't see anybody's pictures because I've got like 7 things. Oh, there, I just moved my chat. So now I can see you guys. Hey there. All right, so this is Anna Couvret. And once again, not only is she an auctioneer, she's a comedian, she's an actress. She knows how to energize a room. And hey, you over there on your cell phone talking to your friend about sports, eyes up here. She knows how to do that, right, Anna?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
So let's start out by this. When you're going to choose a professional auctioneer like Anna, I'm going to go through this, Anna, before we hop onto your stuff. You need to ask around town in San Diego who has an auctioneer that's excellent. Super important. Everybody knows someone who's had an auctioneer. Find out who everybody loves. That's how we got Anna, like total referrals. People have said, yeah, she's awesome. Then you have maybe 3 or 4 auctioneers, and I'll tell you why in a second. View their websites and their reels. Every auctioneer worth their weight in salt has a website, and then they have a sizzle reel, which means you click on and they're doing their stuff, and that's how you go, oh, that seems like a good fit here. Then you're going to get references from that auctioneer, and I will tell you, that's important, because you want to ask questions like, were they on time? Did they work with you beforehand? How much did you raise? Was there anything that was a red flag? Get references from the auctioneer and follow up with them. And then lastly, this is the most important, actually interview them. You need to do a Zoom with them, because a lot of these auctioneers don't live in San Diego. Interview them to see if how they talk, their ethos fits with your mission, and if you feel comfortable that they're going to really get you. You know, it's sort of an important thing. So now we're going to talk about when you find, say you go, okay, we've got our references and referrals. We interviewed Anna. We love her. Anna, how do they prepare you for success?
So usually before an event, we do kind of a pre-show meeting, and that talks about everything, all the live auction items, the different levels of the paddle raise. And the best way to kind of position your auctioneer for success is crafting a run of show that's going to optimize the fundraising. So for example, bare bones run of show, if you just kind of aren't doing an award show, or let's say just really bare bones, kind of the best way to maximize your fundraising is to consider that your crowd's attention is a finite resource. You're not going to get people to pay attention for usually longer than about an hour to an hour and a half. And that's kind of pushing it. But if you're trying to get people to do a 3-hour program, because you've got a lot of VIPs and you want to put your fundraising in the best position so that you can raise the most money. So for example, like a bare bones run of show, you have your cocktail hour, your silent auction, your, buy your golden ticket, and then we move everybody into the ballroom. Let people eat their salads. If it's a 3-course meal, let them eat their salads, let them get all that fun conversation out. And then usually I like to start the program when entrees go down. That way kind of everyone's had time to chat, and now it's kind of time to start the program. If you wait a little bit longer and let people finish their meal, you run the risk of them leaving because they've had their dinner and they might head out. So a good kind of bare bones run of show is, let's say entrees go down, you do a welcome from, let's say, a board president or a gala chair or an executive director. Then we move into the live auction. Then you do your best speaker or most heartstrings tugging video. And then we move into the paddle raise. And that's a super bare bones run of show. A lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times we're giving out awards, or we have a really awesome VIP. And obviously, like in that pre-show meeting with your auctioneer, you want to talk about maybe like what is going to be the best run of show. I've done a lot of events where you have a really awesome VIP in the room, and what has drawn a lot of people to your events. So you want to kind of think about, how do you position that VIP in the run of show so that you're maximizing your fundraising? I've done several events where we did the VIP first, and then everyone leaves before the fundraising.
I was going to say, Anna, she's right on with that. And if anybody wants it, and you can email me, you have my email. I have my typical run of show that I do. It's a little different than what Anna does, but it's exactly what she says. Let them socialize, get them excited, do the paddle raise, VIP honoree at the end so that their friends don't leave. Anna, another thing I want to ask you about preparing is they should be getting you information about their mission, their honorees in advance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in that pre-auctioneer meeting, I also usually touch base about, like, when we go over the live auction items, who are your donors for the live auction, and are they going to be there? Because that's really important, because I like to meet the donors for the live auction items during that cocktail hour, because a lot of times they have personal details to share about the items that they've donated that did not make it into the description, but is really cool. Like, for example, I did an event recently where they donated courtside seats to it was in Utah, so to a Jazz game. And the seats, as it turns out, were right on the aisle. And this is not something that made it into the description, but because they're right on the aisle, they charge everybody a beer tax or a hot dog tax if they want to make it into the aisle. So they end up with a lot of, free beer and food. And that's something really awesome to mention.
Never heard of that.
But
That's
did not
good,
make it into, the normal description for the live auction item.
Yeah, that's great. So that's when you're anything you can do to give more information to your auctioneer beforehand is just golden. I mean, no matter what. Now, what about how many live auction? Because I've heard, and this is incorrect, folks, but I've heard people say, oh, 20 live 17, 20 live auction items.
So it kind of depends on your event. I would say 20 is too many. So for example, I know that I average around 4 minutes a live auction item. So I'm able to tell you, based on how many items you have, approximately how long it will take to do your live auction. So I usually recommend anywhere between 4 and 10 items. If you've got 4 items, you're looking at a 16-minute live auction. If you've got 6, you're looking at 24 minutes. If you've got 10, you're looking at a 40-minute live auction,
Yeah,
which
and that's
can be a
too
little
long. It's
Yeah.
you have to remember that only about 5% of the people in your audience actually are bidding on live auction items. The rest are amused at the beginning to see the wealthy people bidding, and they're resentful by the end. That's why you want to not. They leave, they go get a drink, they're looking at their phone, they're staring at their watches. So that's why I do 4 to 6. 6 is my max. But what she's saying is right, is that this is kind of entertaining and engaging people to lead them into the paddle raise ask. So what you want to do is make sure we don't lose people by hitting too much up. That's a really good one. Okay, understanding your audience interest. That's important.
Yeah, so I usually will recommend, like, if I get questions about finding items, try to find the most universally liked items for your live auction. For example, a trip to Maui is a very universally liked item. Everyone can picture themselves laying on a beach in Hawaii. But also understanding your audience. So for example, like if I'm doing an event for, let's say, La Jolla Symphony and Chorus, a live auction item that did really well there was conducting the choir in the Messiah concert on Christmas Day. Like that's a big item for them, but maybe that's not going to do as well at the Military Spouse Association. For the Military Spouse Association, they had this beautiful coffee table with coins that the soldiers collect and put in the coffee table. That did really well at that event. That's not going to do as well, let's say, at an elementary school event. I auctioned off a vasectomy at an elementary school event. That did phenomenally at an elementary school event. That's not going to do as well, let's say, at Meals on Wheels. So kind of finding those universally liked items, but also understanding what your audience is going to want to bid on based on the interest that they have. And a lot of times when I come into a new client, I ask about the crowd. I ask what their interests are. I ask if, these are items that have been previously done and how well they've done in terms of kind of finding their live auction items. And
you have to be careful too. It's okay to say no. I have an upcoming auction and somebody came in with a free consultation for 2 hours with a divorce lawyer. And we're like, well, who's going to be bidding on that? Like, hey, honey, look what I just won. So yeah, those are things that you want to stay away from. All right, starting pricing. Oh, that's always a big one.
So I recommend starting at 1/3 of the fair market value. So let's say you have a trip that's valued at $3,000. I would start that at $1,000. Now there are sort of 2 caveats to that. One is obviously if it's a consignment item and there's a reserve. So if you bought a consignment item, we're obviously going to start above the reserve. The other caveat to that is if it was donated by someone that is in the room that is specific about what they want their item to start at. And that is usually a conversation that I will have with the donor. Now that can be true for somebody that's, let's say, donated their house in Sonoma and they want that to go really well and they're very specific about what they want that to start at. It's especially true for artists that have donated their artwork or a donor that has donated their time. And that's usually a conversation that I will really make sure that I have, especially if the artist is present, just because, they put a lot of work into that piece. And I want to make sure that I'm starting it at a level that they're comfortable at. And that way, let's say like worst case scenario, it doesn't sell. They feel like I had that conversation with them beforehand, and they at least feel like and you as a charity put in a lot of work to making sure we put it under the best circumstances for it to sell.
Yeah, it's super important to understand that just because somebody thinks their house in Big Bear is worth this and nobody else thinks it, you have to have honest conversations. And that's not always easy, especially as you are trying. People who make donations are usually your biggest donors and your board members and supporters. We must be very tactful in how we talk to them about their things. All right, so Anna, this is something I want you to talk about. Explain gamification, and do you love it or hate it or both?
So it really depends on the event. So there's a lot of different games that we will play, right? I know a lot of you know heads or tails is a really big one. Heads or tails can be really beneficial if you have a crowd that you know is going to get into it, and if you have a crowd that could be a little trickier to control. I do this a lot at elementary school galas because parents get really into it. They like everybody coming down to the dance floor and doing the heads or tails, and it kind of gets everybody to pay attention because they're playing a game. And it's good to do kind of at the top of your program, especially if you have a crowd that's going to be a little bit harder to control. I also will do what I call like fun, gamey, freebie live auction items. For example, First Out Ballet is one that costs nothing and is very easy to do kind of night of. But it really depends on your event. If you have an event that's going to be a rage or a party and everyone is going to Uber to the event, you don't want to do First Out Ballet because nobody drove there. But if you are at a hotel and you know that it's going to take a half an hour to get your car at the end of the night, that's a great situation to do First Out Ballet in.
Yeah,
So,
and a lot of that's really great. I love the First Out Ballet. I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, I've sold it for what I would consider to be too much money, like $3,000. It can go really, really well.
I've seen an auctioneer sell a glass of water for $1,000 at the start. Okay, so everybody who's listening, put an L if you love games at auctions and H if you hate games at auctions. Like, do you love gamifications during a live auction or hate it? I would love to hear it, people.
And we got some loves. Yeah.
We got two loves. Okay, look at this.
Yeah.
Stephanie is an H. Okay, Lenise. Hi, Lenise. Hi, Lenise. I love the San Diego Botanical Gardens. So, yes, me. I hate that. I don't know what it is. Yeah. I know it's just me, but we're getting love hates both.
Love hates.
Yeah.
And you can do it during your paddle raise as well. So there's like two kind of big games that you see a lot for the paddle raise, and that's usually at your final level. And that's last paddle standing, and it's a paddle sweep. And last paddle standing can be really fun, but it adds a lot of time to your program. So if you have a short program and you want to kind of see those increased donations, last paddle standing is a great tool for that. If you have a really long program and you want to cut down on program time,
right,
and you still want to make it kind of fun, you can do a paddle sweep, which is that you collect everybody's paddle at the end and then do a drawing. And that's
cut the best. We love that one. That's what we do, is we call it, we call it a paddle drop. We announce we're going to become, your people are coming around with baskets. For $100, if you drop your paddle in this basket, or you can say 50, whatever, we're going to bring these baskets up. We're going to pull it for a trip to Napa. Yeah. You have to have a valuable enough trip that they would do it. That is pretty. So, and I don't know last paddle standing. Haven't done that. What is that?
Last paddle standing is essentially when you get to the end of your paddle raise at let's say the $100 level, you read everybody's paddle numbers at the $100 level. And then let's say paddle number 254 is the last person to donate. I would say, okay, paddle 254 is our last donor of the evening, unless somebody else would like to win a 2-night stay here at the Omni La Costa or something like that.
Right. So it's similar. It's just they're doing it in person.
So then I read out all the paddles, and then whoever is the last person to donate is the winner. Now you have to kind of trust your auctioneer when you do that, because you have to kind of find the sweet spot of like getting a lot of donations, but also not having it drag on too long.
And that for me, and so this is the event planner in me. The event, I would be literally crawling up the walls because my program timing would be off. So that's why we do the paddle drop. But paddle drop is really great. offering something as a raffle, just like Anna said, is great. And Stephanie, 250 level. Yeah, if they'll do it, good for you. I love that. Okay, moving on. Consignment items, pros and cons.
Yeah, so consignment items can be great if you need a little bit more to beef up your live auction. I would say the pros are that you can get some really cool experiences. There are some cons. You want to try to stay away from items that have very high reserves because it's hard to get bids. And typically, like, you know, especially if I'm doing a live auction where I'm starting most of the live auction items off at a third of the value, and then we throw a consignment item in there that's, let's say the reserve, I just did one recently with a really high reserve. It was a $6,500 reserve on an $8,000 item. That's harder to sell because you're starting at so high, close to the value, that it's kind of hard to get people motivated to bid at those early levels, and you don't have the momentum that you would normally have in a regular live auction, if that makes sense, for a regular item.
It
So I
does.
would-
Yeah.
I would try to find consignment items that are lower reserves and specific. So sometimes with the consignment item companies, you can get a consignment item that's like a choice item. So like you can pick your European destination. You can go to Tuscany, or you can go to
Yeah.
Portugal, or you can go to Croatia. That's in theory sort of cool, but it's not super specific. And I'm not able to give specifics to the donors. The donors it's not a very tangible thing for me to describe to the people in the room versus, like, let's say an Italian destination where on day one, you're going to be making pasta
Right.
at an old vineyard, and then you're going to go stomp on the grapes at, you know, later that afternoon, and then drink
And
the
it's
wine that you
true.
made. That's
And one
kind of,
thing, we
yeah.
always find a person, we always do kind of a questionnaire before of our staff and board and our teams to see where they want to go. Is anyone planning a trip for here? If we get it at this level, will you purchase it? We make sure it's already purchased.
But you know, if you do find a unique consignment item that's very specific and especially a little bit experiential, that can be really strong. Like, for example, this Saturday, I'm doing an item that is 2 tickets to the AMAs and 2-night stay at LA Live. That is something that's really hard to find and is not something that you can necessarily just go out and buy. So that kind of item for a consignment is something that's really cool and doesn't come up a lot. And that's kind of the value in finding those specific cool consignment items.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Handling unsold items gracefully. We try not, God, I haven't had that in a long time.
So I certainly have it. It will absolutely happen. Usually before I go into a live auction, I have an inkling for what is maybe not going to sell. And that is those items that are not universally cool. Because they are a very niche item that you have to have a real need for. So things that I've sold in the past that kind of are like that are a brake system to hook up your truck to your trailer, a brake-like system. That is very niche, and you really have to have somebody in the room that is in need of that. A ceramic car coating, for example, that is also very niche. A whole new porch light system, that is also very niche. So when I see those live auction items that come up that I'm maybe a little bit nervous about, I will have those conversations with the charity to see if they want to keep that as a live auction item. And then also, if the donor is present, I will have it with the donor, and I will ask them, if it doesn't sell, can I drop the starting value to try to get it sold in that way? If they say no, I will ask out for bids. If there are no bids, I will say, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep this item on reserve for someone who at a future of a event is really going to have a need for it.
And that's why it's so beautiful to have a professional like Anna, is because they can handle things without. So we're going to segue into the next thing. So the paddle raise, everybody know this, but just like we were talking about unsold items, there is nothing that will kill your paddle raise faster than the top level not selling. Absolutely. If you have crickets at the top 1 or 2 levels, it's the most awkward, uncomfortable thing, and it's a buzzkill for the room. Always make sure the top 2 levels already have seated people in there who you know have agreed to raise their paddle at that level. Super important. Okay, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, and then kind of crafting your paddle from there. The other thing that I would say is you always want to make sure that you do your live auction before your paddle raise. And the reason for that is some people come into the room with a number that they are planning on spending that night. So let's say I go to a gala and I know that my budget for the night is $5,000, but I really, really want that trip to Maui. If you do the paddle raise first, for example, I'm not going to raise my paddle at that $5,000 level because I'm going to wait to see if I get the Maui trip. And then I reserve that $5,000 and then I get beat on the Maui trip. So now I'm in a situation where I would have spent $5,000 tonight, but the paddle raise was first and I didn't win the Maui trip. So that's why we want to do the live auction first. Because if I do the live auction first and then I'm a donor and I didn't win the Maui trip, then I'm going to raise my paddle at that $5,000 level. So that's something that's really important, kind of going back to that run of show. But then also finding values that work for you. I do pretty standard values. If you're starting at $10,000, we're going to go 10,000, 5,000, 2,500, 1,000, 500, 250, 100. And that can vary depending on your crowd. Some charities like to end a little higher at $250. Some charities like to end a lot higher at $1,000. It just kind of depends on your crowd. And that's something that I usually go over in that pre-event meeting as well. And is something good to go over with your auctioneer as you're prepping for your event.
That's awesome. Thank you, Anna. All right, so that's our auction. If you have more questions for Anna, hold on. We're going to talk to Lauren next, and then we're going to take questions. And we have our somebody just unmuted. I don't know who that is. Is that you, Lauren?
It was me, yes.
Oh, there's a really loud noise. Can you hear? Are you in a loud area?
No, unless it was the air conditioning.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we're going to go. All right. So let's talk about when you are actually running your event. There is, no matter how well you plan your auction, your live auction, your silent auction, if people can't register smoothly, they're pissed off. When they walk in registration and the line is out the door and their paddle number is screwed up and they can't figure out the mobile bidding and things aren't going right, you will lose money at your event. You are leaving money at the table. So let's talk to Lauren about the volunteers, about training and onboarding volunteers. That's something that you like to see happen, right, Lauren?
Absolutely. And I think first, we should give a shout out to our volunteers. These are people with pure heart. They're giving maybe monetary, but mainly giving their time. Right. So at the end of the day, you don't want to then put them in a position where they feel overwhelmed. You've put an iPad or a laptop in front of them and you've not set them up for success. They do not feel like they've done a good job. They leave feeling overwhelmed. At the end of the day, they're the people that are shouting about your mission. They don't necessarily have to be tech savvy.
Right.
So really finding out about your volunteers and how they want to help and where some of their natural skill sets lie before you can then allocate who's doing what across the event. I think another thing, they haven't always attended a gala before. There's all different types of volunteers, but it's very specific what you need to do on the night. And it might not just be check in and check out. You need to know about the event. You need to know about the silent auction items because you may be asked. You need to know what time the silent auction is closing or what time the live is starting, who's seated at which table, who's a VIP. There is so much that can be incorporated and be.
So I'm going to put right here, if you all want to email me, I have all the volunteer protocols and the volunteer matrix for a typical gala in a template. If you email me, I will send you, they're written out, like how to greet the guests, how to do closeout, how to do checkout. It's all written down. And if you're working with a program like GiveSmart, Octria, Auction Frog, they have a written protocol to put in front of the computer that says, welcome guests, press this, get their name. It's all written down. So showing them that is super, super important. So how do you get guest check-in to be efficient, since that's the first thing that people see when they walk in a gala?
So you really need to make sure you've got the right amount of staff or volunteers and making sure that they know what they are doing. So they are set up for success. They do know the technology in hand. And again, the right people have been put in the right places. So it's not just about being able to get people through the door and plug it into the technology. You also want to build that rapport at the same time. So if that volunteer or staff is sat there thinking, okay, can I take your name? Okay, this is where you're going. You'll receive a text message now, and it all comes out, this sort of blunder of information. The guest then becomes overwhelmed, and they probably still don't know what happened or where they're going next.
I know.
So it's
And
about also catering to have enough time to have spent with that guest as they arrive, because you are that first person that they see. So it's customer service at the same time. So with that smiley welcome face, to be able to explain efficiently what's happening throughout the evening, why they are giving their credit card at that moment in time is also very important. And then where their next steps are.
Now, one thing that I do is I have one person I call the registration concierge, and it's one of my best, it's one of my people, one of my staff members, but one of your best volunteers or staff members. Stand at the head of the line. You greet the people as they are waiting in line. Tell them you're so glad you're there. And then when the next person is available the next registration person is available for people to go to, you go, they're available. Please go. Thank you. Have a good evening. What it does is, first, they feel immediately welcomed. 2, they don't feel like they're just standing in a line. Someone's chatting them. 3, it makes your line go faster, because it's just like when you go to Home Goods or you go to Michael's, where they have the little says somebody's available. It makes your line go faster. Lastly, too, is now with automatic guest check-in, and Lauren knows this is so true, is that lots of these platforms allow the guests to check in themselves. So if you have somebody standing at the front of the line, they said, have you pre-checked in? And they say, no. It's like, you can check in on your cell phone. Just pull it out and we'll do it together. So while they're waiting, they can put their own credit card information in and check in, and they don't even have to go to registration. Super fast, super fast, super fast. Okay, you can tell that I'm very passionate about guest check-in. I think it's important. All right, so bidding during silent auction. This is not my thing. I don't do a lot of mobile silent auctions for a million reasons, but I am doing that in a couple weeks. So how do you make sure bidders can bid during the silent auction?
I think that just stems back to what I just said about making sure they know on arrival what they're signing themselves up for. Some of them aren't even aware that there's a silent auction. So when we say check-in or registration, yes, you are checking into the event, but we're actually registering you at the same time for the silent auction, which is a crucial part of this evening's fundraising.
Huge.
So also going back to what you said about having a small script for them in order to be able to say, once you've said it 3 times, it will just start rolling for them the more the guests enter. So making sure they know. And again, you have received the text message to your phone. Oh, you've been bidding already. Great. Well, we'll just send you another. So you've got that link right at the top of your messages. Follow that link and you can scroll through the items, and then probably even giving them direction towards the display. The silent auction items are on display just through into the reception area. Anything we can do to give them that bidding to start with. And then we would have volunteers and staff walking around that auction display area, being able to answer questions. If you can see someone struggling on their phone, it's quite obvious, and they've got the squint trying to scroll, like being able to confidently approach them and say, can I show you how to place that bid?
And that's really, and that's a key thing. So having people strolling that are quite visibly the helpers. For this event that's coming up, I'm actually doing Dr. Seuss hats with something that says, ask me on top of it, because we want it to be clear that there are people who can help you. Ask me during the mobile bidding. It's new for this organization. Then we're having one table that is a place where people who are having trouble can go and give them their bidder number, and that table has a laptop that person, that staff member, is just doing the bidding for them. So if they have trouble, there is one place that the helpers can bring them over to, and it easily can be handled. And that's knowing that there's help for that. And of course, it's not the millennials and 20-somethings who are having trouble. It's the 60, 70, and 80-year-olds usually who are having trouble. So doing that. All right. So sequence clothing. I don't do this. What do you think about that, Lauren?
Again, it does really depend on the event, firstly. if that would work for the guests. And also, secondly, it depends on the platform. Sometimes it's not so simple to do depending on the technology you are using. So if it is something that is crucial to your event or something that you've done for years on paper, make sure you ask that question when you are researching platforms, when you are looking for a change, because it's not always possible or not always simple. Usually it's possible. Same when it comes to then your checkout. You've got maybe have confused bidders because they didn't realize which category they were bidding in and they want to check out now. I'm like, well, you haven't quite won yet. Well, they've already won. Why? And it just creates confusion. But
I didn't know
obviously,
that.
all confusion can be avoided with communication. So if you've got a great auctioneer on stage that keeps making these announcements and really builds up the hype of when each of these categories may be closing, then I've also seen that work fantastically as well.
Is there a reason that people do sequence closings? I just don't even, I've never done it, so I wouldn't even know why they do it.
To build momentum for each category. I would say, I can't think of another reason. I've seen schools do it. They close per classroom if they were doing artwork or something like that.
I do it a lot. Like I will do the sequence closing, and it's usually because there are so many silent auction items.
Oh,
Yeah.
no wonder I
so-
don't have it. I don't have so many silent.
It's so overwhelming that you can't close it all at once. You
Oh
don't
my
have the
gosh.
volunteer capacity. And so you do it sort of table by table. And it does create momentum. And it also creates kind of people are like, okay, I'm done bidding on this one table. And now I'm going to go to the next table that's about to close. And it helps because if you have 10 items that you want, you can't be in 10 places at once if you close everything down at once.
God, that makes great sense. I guess that's why I'm a big fan of the 50 and under silent auction. So that's why. All right. Tracking live auction. This is for Lauren okay, you've got this great paddle raise going on. Anna's doing her thing on the stage. It's now the paddle raise and the paddles are flying. Tracking effectively the paddle raise and the live auction.
Yeah, this is where we build our rapport with our auctioneers. The best thing our staff are taught to do on the night is make friends with the auctioneer as soon as you arrive. Luckily, we know a lot of our auctioneers that we work with multiple times now, but even if we didn't, it is one of the first things to do when arriving on site. Make sure you know how they are calling, what is their style, and then we obviously have our tracking sheets that we use, that the staff are provided with in order to be able to do that. But then the communication between the lead and the auctioneer, if we misheard something, we could have misheard a paddle number that was for 25,000. Don't be shy to ask the auctioneer to please repeat once again. Otherwise, you've just lost 25,000.
Right. And
right?
just so, right, and we also recorded on two cell phones.
Yep.
I have a
So
cell phone
we always
behind
have-
behind the auctioneer and in front of the auctioneer.
They will always record it, whatever manner that they can, a voice recording of it. We always have at least 2 of our team for cross-reference, and then we always ask the organization for 2 from their team as well, and everything is cross-referenced before it is then put into their technology. There are some platforms that can be put in real time as well, but we would still record, we would still scribe as well as being put in real time at the same time, depending on the needs of the client and the technology.
Perfect. I love that. All right. Efficient guest checkout. Any tips? Because that's where things fall down.
Well, pretty much all the technologies now will allow them to do it by phone. So we can almost completely avoid a checkout. I've seen some organizations not give out any items on the night, and then other organizations want to get rid of absolutely everything. Right, on the night, so they don't have to deal with it. Yeah, some of them have just said, "Oh, it's easier. Come and pick it up from the office app." They have their receipt. Come and pick it up.
Part of me totally loves that, and then part of me would be like, "You can't bring the stuff with you." I guess it's like that's really interesting. I never knew that.
If it's a very high-end item and you've maybe had a few drinks on the night and you can't quite carry that item into your Uber home.
I've seen a drunk guy try and drive his motorcycle. He won out of a hotel
no.
ballroom, and thank God we had to drain the oil out, so he couldn't. But yeah, he literally stamped his feet like Rumpelstiltskin, screaming, "It's mine, it's mine."
Oh, gosh.
All right, that was great.
But using
All
the
right,
technology in order to be able to set up that efficiency is the best way. And then also having sort of a streamlined desk ready and set up with, again, your volunteers or staff very well prepared. I tend to call it like a conveyor belt. So, okay, please, sir, what is your name? What item did you win? We'll find you in the system. We can take
right,
the payment here for you. You then go to the next station where we've written down the item number.
right.
A runner will go collect the item and hand it over, but you're keeping that motion.
Right. And if you're
Really
interested in
important.
how like my team transitions the registration to the cashiering, moves all of the silent auction items towards the cashiering station while everything's happening in the ballroom, I'll answer questions at the end, but it's not my time. All right. So we had a question up here about if there's any free platforms that allow, I don't know, whoops, sorry, I don't know if that we have any of this. Are there any free platforms that allow, that we know of, that allow pre-check-in, like self-check-in? Do we know that? That was a
Free
question.
platforms.
Free platforms. I don't know, but you know who might? Well, let's move away from that. I don't know any answers about that. Sorry about that. It was a good question, but I know my favorite. Do you guys have any favorite platforms?
I think they all have their
Pluses and minuses.
yeah, they all have their pros and cons. Exactly. And again, it's event dependent on your needs and your budget. And I think there's enough out there at the moment to be able to cater for all. Yes, you've got the free ones. They might not necessarily have all the bells and whistles, but do you need bells and whistles? Or you've got the higher end where you're paying a lot more
Right.
for it. It really does do everything. And if your event is going to incorporate everything, then you really do want to invest in the technology in order to be able to do that. So it's
Right.
just about looking at that return on investment overall.
Right.
If you need the reporting, if you need it to integrate with other platforms that you are using, there's a lot more that goes into this technology than just how to place a bid.
It is. And now I do have favorite platforms. I have platforms I absolutely hate because I use everything. I will not say who I hate. You can always email me and get that. But I will say that I really do like GiveSmart. I think that that is a good platform. Okay, thank you, everybody. GiveSmart I like, but my favorite, and this is for smaller and medium organizations who probably most of you are, my favorite's Octria. And the reason is Octria has the world's best customer service. They do weekly webinars, and they have somebody named Lori Hockman, who is like the Pied Piper of auctions. And guess what? Guess who's here? Lori, are you here?
I am, AJ. Thank you for the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you, as well as the fabulous group here.
Oh my gosh. So I met Lori in Florida. One of the things is that basically, except for maybe Anna, none of us live in San Diego. We're all over the place that we do all these events, and we meet in Toronto or in San Diego at these conventions that we're at. So I met Lori when I just started Queen Bee a few years ago, and it was like mind melding. It was right at the beginning when platforms are really starting to be a thing. And Lori has been so innovative for Octria, not just in listening to what organizations say, hey, we need this, it's not on your platform, which are now on her platform because she listens. She literally puts on webinars every week with every subject under the sun. So I'm going to quickly go through silent auction stuff with Lori, and then we will go to Q&A for whoever can stay on. I know that we're going, it's already 1 hour. So we'll stay on a little bit longer so that those of you who really want to know other questions, we will answer questions for you. But Lori.
I'm with you, AJ.
Okay, you stay here. How many is the ideal number of silent auctions? And can you break it down into if you have a 300-person event or if you have a 500-person event? Oh,
So
we do, Sharon. Oh, I'm sorry. Sharon just said we have 11:30. Woo, good, because we can stay on here forever.
Oh,
Okay,
good. I have another 29 minutes. No, I'm
I
kidding.
would say, well, we can slow down now. I won't talk so fast. I was worried. All right, Lori, go ahead.
The ideal number of silent auctions really depends on the number of wallets you have in your room. Write that down. Not the number of people, not the number of volunteers. It's the wallets in the room. And then you want to reduce that down in half, probably to about 50%. But that's a broad range. It depends on if you're in a carnival setting or in a community setting, and there's people coming in and there's people coming out. If you're a straight gala, you probably want to reduce that number, because the lower number of items you have, the higher those bids will go. So it's hard to tell you an exact, but at least start with your number of wallets, split that in half, and then that's your highest amount that you want to have for your silent, your mobile bidding, your online paper, any of those auction items.
See, I'm even stingier than that, Lori. I'm a 35 to 50 item person.
I
It's
hear
not-
you. I totally hear you.
And I will tell you why. And Lori knows this. Everybody who's listened to me is probably bored of hearing me say this, but a silent auction is like a bargain shopping spree for your guests, which has nothing to do with your mission. It takes a lot of resources. It's entertaining. It does break the ice. I am not saying don't do a silent auction if that's your thing. Do it. But the thing is that after a certain amount of looking, your mind, have you ever been shopping and after an hour you'd like your brain just stops seeing things? It's called law of diminishing returns. If you have so many auction items with so many auction like tables with auction items, people stop seeing it. They kind of just tune out. They kind of get bored. They will not spend more money because you have more auction items. They will just not bid on as many. There'll be leftover items that you don't do. So we can have a cage match during question and answer about this. So Lori is yeah, but
Totally
I
agree with you. And if you're doing that on paper, if you're doing online auction, you've got people outside the room bidding, so you're going to have more wallets.
right, and she's right. So and listen, well, we can talk about online auction after this because it's a whole different category unto itself. It can happen anytime. But your cocktail portion of your gala is when you are building community, making connections. Your board members should be there introducing your guests to other board members, to staff members, talking up the mission. This is when people start feeling like, hey, I like these people. They talk to me. It's not about seeing this back of someone's head when they're looking at these paper bid sheets or these lucite frames with the QR codes. It is about starting connections and getting people to build affinity for your organization so that when you go to Anna in the ballroom, they're primed and ready for Anna to say, look at how great we all are. Look what we're doing as a group. Let's do it some more, right? So that is why I'm a small silent auction person. There was a lot of explanation. See, Sharon gave me an extra half hour, so hell. Okay. Getting organized before you start. I was talking about that. Do you have anything else to add about it?
Yeah. And, just to dovetail on what you're saying and ride your coattails, AJ, that's exactly what the purpose of this event fundraiser is. It's an event fundraiser. Let everybody know that. And you're doing two purposes. You want to raise money, but you also want to raise awareness for your cause. And being organized before you start is a key to that. From the moment you start asking for auction donations, or the moment you look for sponsorships, or the moment that you put your digital footprint out there, it's because we have a beautiful botanical area, feeding the children, nurturing the animals, whatever it is. So those two have to come together, and being organized in your messaging is important. So we're talking about our silent auction strategies, and I'm going to kind of encompass this in all of your auction item strategies. You want to have your procurement, which AJ was talking about. You want to know who you're going to ask. I'll drop some links in here. I have a whole list. We have Pinterest boards that have over 500 donation request pages, and these are directly to companies. We have some groups that do that as a composite, and you can kind of fill out a form once and it sends to multiple people. There's all sorts of ways for finding auction items. And having, like AJ said, have that procurement letter, print it for your board members. Don't just print them one, print them 5, print them 10, tell them to put it in their glove compartment box. That's how you are going to be able to fill that auction catalog with things that will appeal to people that will come and visit. They'll tell other people to visit, and it's going to go ahead and broaden your views.
That's right. And you may wonder, how is Lori able to get all of these great links in a moment's notice? It's because this is what she does. She's like the outreach person for Octria, and she does these webinars and puts up blog posts that have the resources for you. So I'm a big fan of people who do the work for us so we don't have to work so hard. All right, motivating your team. I think we talked about that, and that part of that really is giving them the tools they need and making them know it's easy. Do you have any other? Some people do
Yeah.
like
I would love to
competitions, I
add to
heard.
Yeah, I would love to add to that because you talked about making it easy. And I mean, making it easy, yeah, I'll be nice to people. Make it super easy. So when you create your event, put up your event website. You want to create your digital footprint out there so people know when the event is, how I can buy tickets, how I can buy sponsorships. But also on that, you talk about, Lauren had mentioned, make sure your website or make sure your platform that you choose does what you want it to do. Look for a platform that you can actually put up a solicit donations form in there. That way your volunteers can go ahead when they're out at the coffee shop and they're enjoying lunch with their friends and they ask the manager for a donation, they can immediately go ahead, put it in the system, bounces over to the admin, and they have it at their fingertips. There's nothing more motivating than seeing that happen and seeing that auction catalog grow.
Love that. Yeah. So great. I agree. Although follow-up is up to you. So this is no surprise to any of you who've been doing this for a while, but people don't want to work that hard, like we just said. So making it easy, like Lori just said, super, super helpful. Following through is up to you. Having a spreadsheet of, hey, we've already received these donation forms online or in physically, and we still don't have the items in hand. We still don't have 20% of our gift cards. It's up to you. Is that true, Lori? Do you agree with that? That it's not going to just magically happen?
100,000,000,000%, absolutely. And you do a whole webinar on sponsorships, and you talk about white glove and following through, and it's throughout this entire process. You have to thank those people for donating the auction item to you, give them a thank you note back. In between that, you want to be able to thank them throughout the process because you want to gain that attention. So on social media, thank you so much for Dave & Buster's for giving us a $50 gift card. And that way, when you tag them, they'll see it, they'll reshare it with their people, and it widens that net. So if you do that throughout the process, then that's giving you some additional traction.
Right. And if you are doing social media thanking for donations, like especially businesses like Jiffy Lube, Dave & Buster's, if you're tagging them and they see that you're thanking them, you are ahead of the game for the other 100 donations they made to your area because no one else is doing that. You are building relationships. And just like we talk about when we talk about sponsorships, it is relationship building. Getting donations is relationship building. And also thank the volunteers who go and get those donations for you because the number is something like 67% of people that volunteer for you, for a gala, for your organization as a whole, become more meaningfully involved or financially involved with you. So 67% of your volunteers will become donors is basically what they're saying. Who can argue with that conversion rate? I mean, it's amazing. So one last thing about silent auction looks, and we will answer questions for as long as you want. There's a local place, a shout out to Renee Zhao, who is a local lady who started donationmatch.com. Donation Match has been around a long time, but they've really catapulted their game in the past year to a whole new level. So what it is you go to donation. I know Renee is the best, Lenice, yay. So Donation Match is where you go on, and I think there's like maybe a little fee. It's not much, but you fill out one application. You fill out all your information about your event, and then it is put onto a database of their thousands plus of companies that want to donate things to different galas and to different fundraisers. They will contact you. So by filling out one form, Donation Match now represents all of Six Flags. All of these amusement parks have signed on for them. So if you want to get tickets, go to donationmatch.com, sign up, just put your information in, and then you'll start getting offers from all these different companies of things they want to give you for your auction. My only caveat, there's two caveats. One is you will get junk you don't want. It's okay to say no. So you will get people who are like, I am like whatever. I'm out like in San Bernardino and I do car detailing. Well, no one's going to San Bernardino to get their car detailed, right? You just say, no, thank you. They will also have very enticing things. And this is every time I've been on Donation Match, because I do very high-end galas, I always get an offer from this African safari preserve, and they say, you can have unlimited gift certificates to sell, 2 weeks in an African game preserve, all food, all lodgings, everything is included, safaris, everything is included, sell as many as you want, values $10,000. And you're thinking, woo, that's great, right? You know, who doesn't want that? Well, here's the problem. It's not a African safari where it's shooting pictures of little cute animals. It's an African safari like that kind of an African safari. And while maybe in Texas and Montana, that's fine. Maybe for the NRA's gala, that's fine. But I guarantee you in Malibu and in Beverly Hills, where I am a lot, in Santa Barbara, not one of my groups has ever taken them up on it, because nobody wants to be saying, hey, yeah, go shoot an elephant, right? So that was a long story. There you go. All right, so now we're going to move to my favorite point, and it's Q&A. And before I get to Q&A, what I'm going to do is go to the next slide. All of our emails are on here, and you can copy them down. And I'm sure that there's a recording of this. And is the recording, it's probably, you can see this will be here, so you can see all of our websites, all of our emails are also in the chat, mine is at least. And I just wanted to show you that. So we're here. Contact us. We answer questions. We love to answer questions. And I am truly, when I say that I don't do an event without a professional auctioneer, that I don't do. I do not do events anymore unless there is somebody from a company like Life Event Staffing, and Life Event Staffing is the golden standard. I can't do it. I cannot be running the stage program and overseeing guest management if I'm worried about the Wi-Fi going down, right? That has been taken care of by Lauren's company. And Lori, she's my bestie. We're like little sisters. So yeah, all of us, we're here for you and whatever you want. So I'm going to actually stop sharing so I can see y'all. If anybody has any questions, this is the time. Oh, good. She's going to share a recording link and the copy of the PowerPoint. Perfect. All right, you guys, this is the time. I guess raising your little virtual hand is going to probably be best, or putting it in the chat box. If you have any questions about anything at all, it would be fair game for us to answer it. No bars hold. Look at, we're just so complete. There's not one question. Joe is. All right, Joe, you can unmute.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm joining from the field right now. So I'm with San Diego Botanic Garden, and I will be the auctioneer for our garden party. And I'm very excited. And I always find, just universally, not just in auctions or galas, that comedy and humor always is helpful, helps people feel more comfortable. I would imagine, Anna, that as you mentioned, or AJ mentioned, you are also a comedian, and I'm sure humor helps with the auction itself. I just was curious if there's any fun little bits that you do, or little comedy tips that you have to kind of help make it a little bit more fun. Yeah, anything you have to recommend to make it a lot more fun for the group.
Yeah,
and the
so
audience.
I guess my first question is, do you know how to do the bitter patter?
No, I don't.
Okay, so
Yeah.
AJ mentioned earlier that she likes to hire auctioneers that have gone to auction school. I did not go to auction school. Fun fact about me, I did not. I learned, I had a really good mentor in Clint Bell, but I learned a lot of the bitter patter from cattle auctioneering YouTube tutorials. And learning bitter patter is the easiest part of being an auctioneer. Anybody can do it. You can watch those YouTube tutorials and you can just practice kind of counting up and down and then having those filler words. The harder part is making the jokes for the room that you're in. And that's something where like my stand-up background helps, because I can make a joke at one event that will not fly at another event. Just based on, and that's, I mean, the great thing about you working for the organization is you're going to know your crowd. You're going to know kind of what jokes you can and cannot make. Obviously, like you and I are different. I make jokes because I'm 5 feet 2 inches. I'm a woman. I'm blonde. We're not common in the auctioneer world. Usually if I start doing the bitter patter, people are a little surprised. So I will always say like, I know it's a little surprising. That is a canned joke that I make almost every time I'm in front of a new crowd. But I would honestly, go do some open mics, and kind of practice some jokes, practice and see kind of what lands and what doesn't, and get the feeling of the vibe of being in a lot of different rooms, because you will find a lot of times, like, it just kind of depends on the room and you have to kind of feel that out to decide kind of what jokes to make. The other thing that I would recommend is I do a lot of narrating of what people are doing in the room. So a lot of times, like you see a husband and wife kind of like discussing whether or not they're going to go on vacation, you can narrate that to the crowd, because the rest of the crowd are not going to be looking at that. They're going to be looking at you. If you have a guy that like hides his paddle, he's been bidding, but then he hides his paddle under the plate, you could talk about that. That's going to get a laugh. And just kind of being aware of everything going on in the room. That's just kind of, yeah, just basic tips.
These are great also for people who are spotters in the room, because it's not just the auctioneer up there that keeps the energy going. It's those of us who are in the room helping him to see what's going on and who is raising their paddle, who might raise their paddle. That's a really good point, Anna, that if you see somebody who's doing something kind of amusing or funny or on the wall, getting the auctioneer over there to say, little bit of marital strife over this one, you know, maybe that's a good thing for those of us in the audience who do a lot of spotting. Maybe we can do that. I love that. Okay, that's a really good thing. And Linny said that Joe is a social media star for the Botanical Gardens. So, and everybody loves the Botanic Gardens. I mean, come on, that you guys are so easy, because who doesn't want to go and give money to the gardens with all of your cool stuff there, the kids area, all that. So that's great. Does anybody else have any questions? That was a really good one, Joe. I learned something. Bitter patter. It's a thing. I have to go now watch that. So
and Anna, sorry, real quick, what was the name of that YouTube tutorial?
Honestly, if you just go and look up like cattle auctioneering YouTube tutorials, there are a lot of like, it's different, right? Charity auctions are different than cattle auctions. So the cattle auction is a hard chance. So it's going to be like, you're 2.5, not going to go 5, not going to go 7.5. And they go by 2.5s, and it's very like specific. Whereas charity, you want to do a little bit more like, we're going to start at $1,000 bidder, not going to go $1,250, not going to go $1,500. And then you slow down and you talk to your donors. So it's kind of a mix of doing that fast talking that people find really impressive, but is not overly challenging to do, but then also slowing down and taking time to connect with the people that are actually bidding.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good luck. I'm excited. Let me know how it goes.
yeah, definitely. This is fantastic. When is your event?
September 7th.
Coming up. All right, Joe,
Yep.
you have your homework for the next few weeks. You want to see a video. This is important. All right. Does anybody else have another question or comment or great tip? Yeah, Paulette.
Guys, question. We're having our very first auction coming up at the end of September, and I believe this is the first time our organization has done it. And I believe the majority of the folks that will be in the audience are going to trend a little bit older. We do have a span of ages, but I do believe, especially for the first one, that our audience will trend older. Are there any specific tips? We're planning to have only live auction and paddle raise, no silent auction. Again, we're keeping things kind of small and so that we can keep our arms around it. But are there any bits of suggestion that you would have for particularly, dealing with a slightly older, less tech savvy audience.
I can start off and then I'll hand it to Anna. You want to make it easy for them to know what the live auction items are. So of course, if you have a tribute journal, a tribute book, we usually put it in the back of the book. So it's easy to flip over to see the full descriptions on the very back couple pages. I also put them a napkin insert. They're called rack cards. You can order them online, but they're like 4x9. They're just a long, thin card. And on the front, we have the logo of the event and a welcome from the executive director or board chair. And on the back, we just list with a 1-sentence description each of the live auction items. That way, they don't even have to search for them. It's super easy because I'm probably in the age group you're talking about for like the older people and everything, but I know that they get flustered. I know that sounds so dumb, but they do get flustered. And so from my thing is the schedule of events is in the front of the tribute books, that they know what's coming and when it's happening, full descriptions and the restrictions on the back couple pages, and then I list it on the napkin insert. Anna, take it away.
Yeah, definitely the restrictions and any blackout dates, like have your auctioneer mention those at the top that they can follow along in the program, because 9 out of 10 times I get interrupted on stage, it's because somebody's asking about blackout dates and they didn't hear me. The other thing that I will say is, where are you having your event?
It's going to be at a church hall.
So the biggest thing for, especially if you have an older crowd, that they can be really sensitive about is sound in a live auction. So doing a sound check, making sure that, like, sometimes when you have speakers that are right next to people, if it's too loud for them, if they have hearing aids, if their hearing aid is turned too loud, they get really finicky. And so they'll want like the sound turned down, but then you can't have the whole room listen. So having a good sound system and having a good test of that sound is really important to making sure kind of that live auction and the paddle race goes smoothly. Because if you don't have good sound, it can be really hard. And when you do have an older crowd, like I said, with the hearing aids, it can just be a little bit more tricky. So that's something I would definitely test out.
That's a really good point. And Paulette, I would also say, if you know who are going to be bidding, like, and we usually know who, it's your first one, you may not know, but you can guess who's enthused and will bid. If they're much older, maybe assign a spotter to stand next to them and kind of even whisper in their ear and repeat things about the levels they're at. Because I know that my dad, who's 97, very hard of hearing, but he feels very comforted when I'm standing by him and somebody says something and I'll just lean in and say, it was this. Like, so I would say, that's $2,500. So they know where the bidding's at. And there's a cognitive, for really old people, there is a cognitive lapse between hearing it and processing it. So that might be just a nice touch for you to do for some of those people. So I hope that answered that question. All right, is there anybody else who has a burning question? I thought that was really interesting about the sound check for older people, Anna.
Yeah, it's not, it will happen for sure. People will get upset if it's too loud and they're by a speaker.
We can never make, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too loud, it's too soft. Yeah.
Curran had a question in the chat, and I work with him at IVC, and he asked, do you recommend doing much promotion to your guests about the live auction items prior to the event? If so, what are the best ways of doing that?
Do you have something to say, or does Lori? Lori is probably the person to add for that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I just dropped in the chat a link that shows all of the current, well, not all of them, but anybody that wants to be public on our page, their current auctions or in the near future. And you'll see that the websites are so different, and you can poke around, and it's like pulling back the curtain on all these galas throughout the United States and seeing what everybody's doing so you can be inspired. But you can have your event website focus on a single page on your live auctions. That's where you can put in your blackout dates. You can put up video for your live auction items, encourage people to bid. If it's going to be something where it's going to be a home that, you know, there's 12 people people and the girlfriends are going to want to get together for a girls' night out or a girls' weekend away. They can plot in advance how they want to do it and they can strategize. So the more information you have out there in advance, the better off you are, especially for your live auction items, so that you can get the right people in the room, the right people in the seats, and the right people bidding.
Right. And I usually will do a separate email blast to not just the people coming, but to everybody, and a social media post highlighting several times the live auction items to get them excited. So if you can send the information to them, that's going to be just as even better, or a link, as Lori said, to it. Lauren, do you want to take this about people paying by check at events versus, we have this online platform. Some of them have already had, they've already given you their credit card, but they decide they just spent $4,000 on a trip to Tuscany. They want to do it by a check. How do you make sure it's done by check and not automatically done by credit card?
Just to confirm, you did say Lauren and not Laurie, right?
Oh, no, Lauren. Yeah, that's you. This is for you, girl.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, this is why we always suggest that there is someone from the organization at checkout with us, with your volunteers and your staff for these types of things. Because of course you're going to accept a check, but we want to make sure that goes straight into the hands of the person at the organization. There are plenty of ways within the platform to then on the back end go in and still mark it as paid. They can still have their receipt, but payment has been handed over directly to that organization, so nothing goes astray, and we just make sure that receipt is sent.
That's a huge thing. So what Lauren is saying is correct. I always have one staff member required to be at the registration and the cashiering, because it's the same table the whole time, because your organization, it's your money. You want to make sure you have oversight of what's going on. So there's two ways that checks will come to you. One is that night. There are maybe 4 people on earth who still carry their checkbook, and they may write you a check. There you go. But a lot of people, if they're $2,500, $10,000, they want to write it from another account, and they will tell you that. So Lauren's team, if I'm right, Lauren, this is correct. If they say we want to pay by check, it's your team who's there doing cashiering that will mark it appropriately that it's going to be paid for. So it's sort of like an IOU. It's going to be paid for, and then a check, they will notate if a check is given or if it is forthcoming. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. We will just make sure it's recorded or reported on the back end so they know on the night, but we just make sure no cash or check.
Right. And it is going to be your organization's follow through. You are responsible for following through to make sure that money does come to you in a form of a check or a AFT or something like that. So that's it. All right. Tags and notes. Yeah, tags and notes are a big deal. Boy, yeah. It's nice when we get it the day of, but the big money lots of times is going to come from a different account. So we have to deal with that. All right. Is there anybody else? Did we miss any questions, or has anybody else got some questions? Because we're right up against, look at, we made it exactly. That's such like an auctioneer event planner per thing, right? We exactly hit 11:30. I love it. All right, you guys, that's it for us. I'm going to hand this over to Sharon.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think that was probably one of the best webinars we've ever had. I mean, really, wow, so much information, valuable information, great presentation. So I will just thank the 4 of you so much. Really, you are a complete brain trust of auctions, events, and all things related to your world. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this. We will upload the link and send that to everybody shortly, along with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And I thank you all again so much. Really, you give so much of yourselves to help our community, and we appreciate it. So have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.